Alright, so really quick, I just want to show you guys a thing that can help you organize your rigs and make it a little bit easier to find things. So, right now I've been sort of, hiding the skin in the outliner, which is annoying because every time I want to do it, I have to go into the outliner and find that thing. And I also have, like, all of this stuff in the back hidden, like this, cable hubs and all this nonsense. Because it's just a pain to look at, honestly. There's an easier way to deal with this than going in the outliner, and it's just display layers. So if you go into your channel box, there's this little box thing down here. Basically what this is ways that you can sort of control the geometry without selecting it. So I've selected all the stuff I wanted to add to the layer, hit this little layer button. The one with the circle, which is probably hard to see, but the one with the circle is... What the heck is my mic? Oh my god. That's awkward. Sorry, my mic was apparently thrown across the bed, which explains why my last video that I recorded and got rid of was kind of quiet. Okay, hopefully this is audible to you guys. Alright, that was really weird. Yes, I did have to go throw the mic down to stop a cat ripping paint off the door. But anywho, sorry. So select your stuff. This little one with the circle is going to be a new layer with the objects you have selected. This one is just an empty new layer. But you can see it's popped this little thing in down here. And basically I can go ahead and just toggle the visibility of those objects on and off remotely without going to my outliner. I can also set them to template mode, which is basically like a weird grayed out wireframe. Can't select them. Or reference mode, which is colored wire, or it's like colored unselectable basically, so it'll look like normal geometry, you just can't select it. Which is helpful when you're rigging, because like I like to be able to see the skin and such, but not select it. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the rest of the body objects, make a new layer. I'll just double click that and I'll name this Geo Skin and save that, and I'll name this Geo Cables? Question mark? Naming doesn't really matter for this. So you'll notice if I set this one to reference that I can no longer select this here, but I can, just keep going and like select all of my arms and all that good stuff. So it's pretty handy, and again, I can just turn it off from there. I don't need to worry about it in the outliner. Makes everything so much easier. Alright, so I have this IK-FK switch set up on the arm, and what I'm going to do, okay. I've done a few things to this, and I'll show you guys how to set this up, but this is like pretty much the minimum that I would expect on your rig. I will show you in like a third IK video a little bit more robust way you can set things up, which is kind of better for doing fancier rigs, but these aren't particularly fancy, so this will totally get you to the place that you need. It's just not as robust. So the other one is extra credit, this one is required for your rigs. But basically what it is, so we have the ability to move this arm around like IK, and then you notice I've made this little switch attribute. So this arm is actually already set up for FK as well. You can see the controllers just floating around there. So I'm just going to go ahead and toggle that switch, and you can see that as I do that, the arm is sort of toggling back and forth between IK, FK functionality. So if we leave this at 0.5 and we move this around, the controller is moving more than the arm, and that is because it is half following this IK controller and half following the bends of this FK controller here. So this is kind of like really nice if you want to sort of blend smoothly between IK and FK. One thing you will notice is that if I rotate this wrist controller that is set up for FK, nothing's really happening. Basically, I'm just going to sort of attach things with parent constraints so that the control of this wrist joint toggles back and forth between IK and FK. I just actually haven't set that up yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and zero out my controllers, make sure nothing is exploding here. And, okay, so let's see. I'm going to click on my wrist, hit F, just because I honestly don't remember where I left off with this. Ooh, close all of the finger nonsense, because I don't care about that. And you can see that I've set up a little parent constraint here. For some reason my orient constraints was broken, so I just did constrain parent and just turned off the translate. Again, I'll go over this again in a few minutes. But right now, if I rotate the wrist joint, the hand follows it completely. If I rotate the FK control, nothing happens. which isn't ideal if you want to switch back and forth and you have the rotation of this tethered only to one of these joints. It's going to make your life really annoying, because then you're going to have to, like, when using IK, go find the FK controller and rotate that for the wrist, which is gross. What you can see is that I actually do have 2 attributes set up here. So basically I'm just going to set up some little set-driven keys. So right now I changed the rotation, and this will follow the wrist halfway and follow the IK control halfway. So I'll show you the set-driven keys. I'll show you how to do this twice, basically. Just because. So make sure that your switch is set to either 0 or 1. I think 1 is my FK. Yeah, 1 is FK in this case. So just go up to animation, key, and set-driven key, set. It'll bring up this little box, and you want to grab the whatever controller you want, in this case that like has the switch attribute here. Do load driver, and it's going to give you all of these options. The next thing that you want to do is find the thing you want to be driven or controlled, in this case the parent constraint itself for that wrist, and do load driven. It's going to give you a bunch of crap here. Basically all you want to do is go through, so for when the switch is set at 1, or literally like whatever it's set to in this case, when the switch is set to 1, I want that's IK functionality, so I would like the weight of the IK control on that wrist to be 1, and FK to have no influence. So I will set FK to 0 and IK to 1. Just come back in here and grab these two. So you notice, like, once you have an attribute selected from the driver and one selected from driven, you are able to do key, and it's going to sort of set this like weird little blue thing. This isn't like a keyframe like down here, it's just sort of an automated, basically if this switch value changes, it's going to automatically adjust these values down here. So what you do now is just come over and set the switch to 0 or FK functionality, back to your parent constraint, set the FK control to 1 and the IK control to 0. And then you should be good to set another keyframe. And at this point, so this is set to 0, so this controller isn't going to affect it, but this one will. If I go and I do the switch, say at 1, the IK controller is going to affect the wrist, and the FK controller will not. And if I set the switch to something like 0.5, they should both affect the controller. So I'll do IK rotation and FK rotation. So that's pretty much how you would set up like a decent little switch. And you'll notice that if you do that, like I'm going to move the IK arm and do something, I don't know, I'm just going to kind of break this dude's arm, why not? But what's going to happen is the rotation is going to toggle very, very nicely between these IK and FK controllers. So you get like full control of that arm, and it's really, really nice and sort of set up in an easy way to animate. So I'm not going to lie, I may or may not use this. The other method I'm going to show you is more useful for stuff like roll joints and human rigs and like extra fancy arm stuff. Basically it involves creating multiple joints, and it's a whole thing. But yeah. So I'm just gonna hide that IK handle. I will name it IK right arm. Always name your stuff. So I'll show you how to set this up on the other side of this arm. With a slight alternative to what I did before. Which I actually think is nicer in general. So basically what I'm going to do is, beauty of being able to hide a skin, so I'm just going to actually duplicate this little FK control really quick. Call it hand switch. I just like having a separate controller with the switch on it. I think it is just kind of easier to deal with things. Strictly speaking, it doesn't really matter. You can attach it wherever you want. I'm going to show you also how to control the visibility of your... Ooh, my is lagging real hard. I'm going to show you how to control the visibility of the controls, so you don't need to look at them if you don't want to. So for this, I usually just sort of make it like a weird little shape, because I can. Maya, what are you doing? Okay, apparently I had soft select turned on. I don't remember that being a thing, but apparently it is. And Maya's gone insane. Great. Just make this horribly unsymmetrical. Why not? Again, this shape doesn't really matter. I have my habits with this at this point, so this is what I am doing. Alright, so notice the pivot is still just at the wrist joint. Doesn't terribly matter all that much. So like I said, I've made this little, I made a controller for the IK wrist and the FK wrist. What I'm going to do, make a IK handle the same way I did in the last video. So skeleton, IK handle, make sure everything's set to defaults, rotation plane solver, all that good stuff. Click on the shoulder, click on the wrist. It makes your lovely IK handle, which I will name IK left arm. Again, whatever naming convention works for you is fine. So basically, what we're going to control, so I'm just going to grab the, what the heck is this? The IK control, grab the left arm, do a constrain, and a point constraint, because orient doesn't matter for these things. So what I'm going to do is just shift that to a place, grab the IK handle, if I can find it, and let's see what happens. This is like the weird... Yeah, so for some reason, I don't know why this is a thing. I gotta turn on stickiness in the IK handle attributes. Turn that on. And then if you go on to solver attributes, you'll notice this little thingamadoodle for IK blend. And if I click that, it toggles it back and forth between my IK and FK skeleton. So this is actually what we're gonna use to control this switch. So what I'm gonna do, it's good to set things up in the neutral position for your rig. What I'm going to do is just grab this little new hand control that I made, go to Edit, Add Attribute, and I will call this IKFK Switch. Alright, and I would like this to be a float. Basically, this is going from, it's either IK or FK, so it only needs to go from 0 to 1. It just sort of keeps things neat working like that. And you do want to make sure that this is a float, so you do want decimal values. You can do, 0.5 interpolation. If you set integer, it's going to either be IK or either be FK, which I think is just like a little bit messy. And by messy, I mean it's harder to work with and will cause weird popping in your animation unless you're extremely careful, and I don't like being extremely careful if I can avoid it. So, float, minimum 0, maximum 1. Go ahead and add that in, and you'll notice that it adds this little attribute here. So I'm just, for now, going to close this, call it a day, and I am going to go back up into my, connection editor, yes. So Windows, General Editor, Connection, and I want the hand switch over here. I'm going to look for this IKFK switch value. Okay, so I'm gonna really quick just edit that attribute because I think it's horrendous to look at. Where is it? Edit attribute. IKFK switch. I'm gonna rename this because it's really, really ugly. Okay. Okay, I'll take FK which, that works too, whatever. Let's update it here. So I'm gonna grab my arm and just do, the IK handle for that arm, do reload right, and I'm just gonna hook up this switch control to the, what was it called? Cough. The IK blend, which is right here. So what this should give us is, if we move this control, right now you'll notice that this is set to 0, so it's basically behaving like FK, and if we toggle that up, it behaves as FK. IK, sorry. So basically, this is effectively all you need to do to set up the arm itself. It's not, I'll show you some like other good things to do, namely, and I will forget unless I do it now, just add an attribute. I do just want to control the twist of this. So again, you could do a pull vector or a twist attribute, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure that this is set to float, add that in, and this time I'm going to go Windows, General Editors, Connection Editor, find my twist, grab my IK handle, load that in, find the other twist, huzzah, and now on this IK handle I should be able to control the IK rotation of my arm. Assuming that is that I am actually on the, you can see it You'd see it twisting. It's gorgeous. See the lovely twist. And because I've set up my joints well, this is just toggling right around the place where it should be, which is great. But anywho, so that's effectively that. So again, I'll walk you guys through the setting up the wrist control again, because that's like a little bit weird. Basically what we have here, and there's a few other things that I'm also going to do while I'm at it. But I have this orient constraint, which right now is only attached to the FK joint. I can tack on extra joints, so if I grab the IK control and then shift click on this wrist joint, go to constrain, orient, you'll notice that that orient joint now has, it's basically added on an additional thing for the IK. Every once in a while I've noticed, like on the other one, apparently it's not having this issue here, which is weird. Again, Maya's kind of nuts. But every once in a while it will do sort of a weird thing where, like when I turned off the rotation for, where am I? When I turned off the rotation of one of these, it would like pop the joint up really weird, and change the rotation of it, and I couldn't get that fixed, which is why instead of using an orient, I just used a parent constraint with the translate turned off. Functions the exact same way, and apparently didn't have the issue. So that's not an issue here, so I'm just gonna kind of leave it and call that a day, which is weird, but whatever. So right now we have this set to basically be controlled completely by the IK setup, sorry. And you will notice there's a very, very strange thing happening with the hands, where basically the rotation is being kept from these controllers, but the fingers themselves are moving and the controllers are not. So I've found that the all-time simplest way to fix that is just grab all of your controllers, make a group for them, call them fingers left, or whatever you're working with. Excuse me. And I'm just going to pull those out from the wrist. So what we have now is actually the fingers will not follow the rig at all, which is not what we want. That's horrible and broken and ew. So what we're going to do is actually just, we need them to follow the wrist basically. So I'm just going to select the wrist joint itself, and then the little group for those finger controls, do a constrain, and this one I would like a full parent constraint so that they follow along and grab the rotation as well. I'll apply that, and if you look at your fingers, you will notice that they now will follow the rig pretty much wherever. And if you toggle back and forth between IK and FK, the controls will follow those finger joints. So that is important to do. Your rig will function totally fine without it. It's just, trust me, awful to use. So I actually want to do the same thing with this little control up here. I'm just going to grab the wrist joint, and again, the weird little controller I've made, do a constraint, parent constraint. And now if I move this around, that little control that I made is always hovering over the hand, which I just think is, like, again, a little bit easier to work with. So I'm just going to run through really quick, setting up the set-driven keys for the wrist rotation once again. So we're in, let's see, we're in IK functionality? Yes, okay. So I'm going to go to my animation menu. Yes, please do save these changes. Why are you... yes, apparently I've set up a new scene by accident, and I don't know how I did that. Cough. This is why you save often in Maya. Because it's nuts. Okay. It always terrifies me when it takes a while for Maya to open something, so I'm like, oh my god, it broke! It broke! Alright, so go up to your animation menu, key, set-driven key, set. Alright, so we have this little thing with the IK. Whatever your switch is on, that's going to be your driver. So I'm going to do load driver, and, oh lord, now I need to find it. Ugh. Hit F, and this orient constraint is going to be the driven. Right now it's actually set up the way it should be, so I'm just going to grab the switch. That. Yes. Okay. So sometimes it'll do... Oh, really? Okay, well that's stupid. It's gotten rid of my IK thing. So really quick, I am going to delete that orient constraint, grab the IK wrist, grab the FK wrist, grab the actual wrist, constrain, because I'm now paranoid, I'm just going to do a parent constraint with only rotation. I will hit apply. And now we should have this, ooh. Oh, beans. Oh no, what did I just delete? That explains a lot. That was the elbow switch. Okay. I'm dumb. Okay, undo that. My elbow should now be connected to things. My orient constraint for this, now I have both of these, and I will load the driven. Excellent. Now I have both options for FK and IK. Huzzah. So grab these, set a key, grab my switch, set that to 0, come back here, 1 and 0, and key this again. So what we should have, if we are very, very lucky, is, let's just do that, because I'm feeling spazzy. Excellent. We have, and now we'll do like this nice smooth interpolation between these two. So that's actually pretty much entirely set up. That is really all you need to do for the basic version of the IK-FK switch. I would encourage you to make better controllers. I actually really hate animating with just like this for an FK control. It's gross. Only other thing that I think is just nice from a usability standpoint, for one, I'm actually going to make a new layer with my skeleton in it. I like a lot of times, I like seeing it or just turning it off because I really don't need it right now. And I'm just gonna grab this little IK handle and hide that. The only other thing I'm gonna do is just make 2 more attributes, and this is just going to control the visibility of the IK or the FK controls. So basically I'll just set this to a boolean. It's either on or it's off. I'm just gonna do add, and boolean that. Huzzah! So what I'm going to do for this is effectively go once again into my connection editor, but basically I'm just going to sort of attach this value. Okay, actually I lied. I dislike booleans for this because I think they're awkward. So I'm just going to grab this, do edit, delete attribute, edit, add attribute. And I will actually make this an integer with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1. So this functions as a boolean. I can just switch between it in a way that I find easier. So I usually just sort of set it up like this. It's really doesn't make a difference either way, honestly. But you'll notice like with the IK visibility, it's either 0 or it's 1. If I try to like enter a value of 0.5, it defaults to 1. So what I'm going to do is, again, Windows, General Editors, Connection Editor. Probably noticing a trend. You can do all of this with set-driven keys. I just hate set-driven keys if I don't need to use them, so I don't. So grab the IK visibility and input the IK control, and you just want to scroll down and figure out where the heck visibility is. So right now, that's set to, my visibility is set to 1 or on. If I toggle it to 0, it just turns it off. So sometimes this can be easier, especially if you have larger FK controls and you just like don't want to look at them, you're only using IK. You can toggle them on and off just, again, to make visibility stuff easier. So for the arm, I'm just going to select the FK visibility attribute here, and I will grab my whole shoulder since everything else except the hands is parented to it. If I reload this and hook up the FK visibility to the visibility on the shoulder, it turns it off by default because it was set to 0, but it's going to hide all of those controls. So you can turn those back on or off at any point in time. Again, I just think this makes things way easier to look at. So I may or may not go back and sort of reset up this arm over here. We'll see how motivated I'm feeling, but that's pretty much what I do for that most of the time. So I'm just gonna grab the this little hand control and just chuck it in the controls. It doesn't really matter where it goes. Just to sort of force my outliner back into some kind of reasonable form. Other thing I do want to mention is, ooh, okay. Snapping. I don't know why this is a thing. It's probably like a hotkey that I just keep turning on by accident. I hate it so much. So if I scale this, let me actually turn on like this, and so the IK and FK switches are not at all toggled to the whatever you're using. You could if you wanted to. I just choose not to. But basically sometimes if you scale it, it's fine. Sometimes if you rotate it, the IK handles like get a little bit weird. Ooh, hello. I always scale to 0, it drives me nuts. But basically, I usually just make a little group for the IK handles, and you do not want that under your master control. So just anywhere floating around, like, ooh, you don't want it with the master control is what I just said. But if you do put it with the master control, why is it every time I try to break things, it doesn't break? It is bad practice to put it there. Sometimes it'll break your stuff. So usually I will put all of my IK handles just like somewhere with the skin, not inside the master control. If you're having issues, again, like with just anything with like IKs breaking, if you scale your model or something like that, try just reorganizing your outliner a little bit. That's, again, usually the cause if it's like a systematic breaking of all the things with IK handles. Alright, so this has been IK handles, the sort of simple required way to set these up. The next video is going to be longer and more convoluted, and I'm gonna have to like make a bunch of joint chains, but this is the one that you can do for sort of extra credit as practice for future character animation classes or anytime you would need the sort of extra functionality. So, until then.